Ave Amicus. Bethesda loves Fallout iconography. Slap a vault suit, power armor, shiny red bottle cap, or a ghoul onto anything, and that's close enough to Fallout for most people. We recognize these notable visual icons on a superficial level, but let's take a more grounded approach to what these things are and how they have functioned throughout the series. From this, we can more accurately guess what Bethesda is going to cook up for Fallout 5 and the future of the Fallout IP. The progression of ghouls in the lore throughout the games is about as bastardized as super mutants and the Brotherhood of Steel. Humans that survived the bombs and became mummified in radiation, leaving walking, talking corpses to wander the Earth's carcass for centuries. Their appearance in the series began as rotten individuals, tired, ancient, and reclusive. Unfortunately, they were too iconic for their own good, and were taken to be repurposed and reimagined in every release of Fallout. Now, they are immortal, self-regenerating, nigh invincible mutants, dependent on a supply of bullshit MacGuffin juice to stave off their feral state. Let's look at how ghouls have fundamentally changed throughout the Fallout series, from rotten survivors in Fallout's Genesis to the super race of immortal smoothskins we have in the present. In the first games, ghouls were simply individuals who survived the bombs and made a living in the radiated hellscape of the post-apocalypse. How they survived the bombs is up to your suspension of disbelief. What matters is that they did survive. Their skin horribly burned and struggled to remain on its body. Their bones showed through the singed tissue, and their flesh rotted away ever so slowly. They in fact did not regenerate because, obviously, otherwise they wouldn't be fucking ghouls. These people were the first to recolonize the broken world. They developed communities and fought to survive in the wasteland. Ghouls in the earlier games needed food and water to survive. As long as they had their basic needs met, the only threat to their existence was the rate at which all of their tissue would eventually decay. Immortal in a sense, but only in the sense that they wouldn't keel over from old age for at least a few hundred years. More likely spending decades wandering in the decayed world would drive them to insanity. Pair this with the decay of their brain tissue, and you'll see a much more natural reason for becoming feral. It was never dependent on any special juice or other MacGuffin. When people did finally emerge from the vaults to repopulate the Earth, these survivors were pushed out of their homes. They were forced to start colonies with other ghouls in less inhabited places. Locations like Necropolis in Fallout 1. The remains of a city that became one of the largest ghoul hubs in the wasteland. Here they were free from the tyranny of smoothskins. However, they still faced problems, because they weren't immortal. They would need food and water to survive. They would need to keep other species at bay, like super mutants and irradiated animals. They were under threat from other ghoul gangs who fought for their chance at survival. For ghouls, it truly was a dog-eat-dog world. Survivors rejected from society, and a fight with their own kind to make the most of the scraps. This informs us of their deep hatred for smoothskins. Imagine being a ghoul for a moment. You survived the bombs, then the decades of darkness and radiation storms, only to scrape out whatever imitation of society you can. Your body is literally falling apart with each day. Fellow survivors begin to turn feral and eat one another. Your world devolves into cannibalism and anarchy. Then, people decades younger than you emerge. They look like you and all of your friends and family used to. They are stronger and better supplied. They march you out of your territory and claim it as their own. You survived this far to be ostracized from the communities you built, pushed out into the wastes once again to regroup with the remnants of your kind and await your inevitable decay. I think their hatred is more than justified. This is the depiction of ghouls from the earlier Fallout games, and what a compelling race of people it is. I love the ghouls from the earlier titles. They are jaded and cruel. Most will attack the player on sight. Some can be found wandering the outskirts of populated areas. Most, however, flock to ghoul settlements like Necropolis to live under the authority of whoever has the most food, water, and guns. In Fallout 1, the ghoul leader we find in Necropolis is Set. He is their leader by virtue of brutality. In ghoul society, the strong, smart, and cruel are in charge. The malcontent are left to the wastes, or become food for others. In Fallout 2, we can find the settlement of Gecko. These ghouls used to live in what would become Vault City. They were pushed out of their home by the emerging Vault dwellers, forced to run the Gecko power plant to the north of the city. Here they are able to survive under the thumb of Vault City. The Smoothskins cannot operate the power plant due to its lethal levels of radiation. Their livelihood is simple. Keep the power flowing to Vault City or their settlement gets glassed. Here we find another ghoul leader, Harold. The same Harold the player can meet in Fallout 1 in Old Town. He traveled south to Gecko and took on the role of leadership. He helps maintain a semblance of society for the ghouls living here, ensuring they keep the generator functional for their survival. In the early Fallout games, ghouls were just that, survivors. Surviving the bombs, the aftermath of chaos and radiation, surviving the emergence of human societies again, surviving the wars waged by these human societies. While they slowly decay, they fight every day to continue their existence in the new world. Most despise the younger generations of smooth-skinned humans. Despite all this, they still manage to live as they did before the bombs to the best of their ability, having jobs, hobbies, and social lives. We see ghouls running bars, playing card games, ghoul mechanics, ghoul gunsmiths. They raise livestock and they farm crops. Because remember, they need to burn calories for energy just like any other mammal. They are still people, horribly decayed and jaded throughout the years, but still people, survivors. Now that I have exhaustively covered ghouls' origins and depictions from the genesis of Fallout, let's move on to the 3D titles. Next, we will be taking a look at the ghouls in Fallout 3. And again, I'll note that I have no footage of Fallout 3, because Steam and the Microsoft Store sold me broken copies of the games that never opened. Bethesda's first main entry in the Fallout franchise did not in fact ruin ghouls. In terms of aesthetics, Fallout 3 actually did a great job at bringing these ghouls to life in 3D models. The ghouls of Fallout 3 look like ghouls should. They are rotting and off-putting. Many of them almost have a glossy, moist exterior, which only adds to their grotesque appearance. We can see how ghouls are mistreated, like in the case of Gob in Megaton. The ghoul bartender will be surprised if the player is kind to them. In the town of Megaton, it is common for patrons to beat or verbally berate any ghouls present. We are shown that ghouls are highly discriminated against. Likewise, there is a quest dedicated to a group of ghouls outside Tenpenny Tower. They wish to escape the danger of the wasteland and seek refuge in the safety of the tower. The player is given mimic quests by the ghouls and the occupants of Tenpenny Tower. We can either exterminate these ghouls, help them invade the tower, or convince the residents to allow the ghouls to move in with them. This quest does an excellent job at portraying the discrimination between ghouls and the Smoothskins. The Smoothskins view them as just another unfortunate intrusion of the wasteland into their peaceful and safe existence. The ghouls view the Smoothskins as arrogant and heartless people, with only disdain for the lives of ghouls. For all of Bethesda's faults, they did portray ghouls accurately in Fallout 3. There are a few instances in Fallout 3 that I have seen criticized in regard to ghouls. One in particular is the ghoulification of Moira Brown. If the player decided to ignite the nuclear bomb in the middle of Megaton, the city will explode. Following its destruction, the player can meet a ghoul NPC that was previously human. Moira Brown will be left alive for the player to interact with, as she is now ghoulified. I have seen criticisms of this, stating that ghoulification cannot happen this fast. I do agree that this is more likely an instance of the devs just wanting us to see a negative result of our choices. However, I do not think this is as big of a lore break as many people do. I personally don't think they should show ghoulification happening this way or this quickly, but there isn't any evidence that it can't. I think most likely she would not be a ghoul proper, but rather she would have just had all of the skin melted off her body. The reason I don't find this lore-breaking is because there is an identical instance of this in Fallout New Vegas that follows the exact same continuity. As Fallout New Vegas was made by many of the same lead devs for Fallout 1 and 2, I find their world to be the definitive canon of Fallout lore. In Fallout New Vegas, with the Lonesome Road DLC, the player can drop a nuke on either an NCR base or a Legion base. In these instances, the player can then go and visit said base. In both cases, the remainder of troops stationed there will be ghoulified and attack the player. This instance functions on the same line of logic that ghoulification can in fact happen this fast. I personally think it should take longer, but the continuity of the games shows that this can happen, thus exonerating the transformation of Moira Brown. All in all, Fallout 3 does a good job with their portrayal of ghouls in the world of Fallout. They are hideous and deformed. They are mistreated by most smoothskins. Because of this, they are spiteful and prejudiced against most smoothskins. They require food and water to survive, and they are not dependent on a magical serum to stave off becoming feral. Fallout 3 has many, many problems, but as far as I can tell, ghouls are not one of them. Moving on to Fallout New Vegas. Now let's take a look at the ghouls found in Fallout New Vegas. These ghouls are of a similar quality to Fallout 3. Their aesthetic is also very well done. They appear rotten and grotesque. Personally, I think ghoul flesh should look like something you'd never want to touch, because that is in fact what a decomposing person would look like. And all of the ghouls we have covered so far fit that description. They look mushy and wet and disgusting, and that is perfect for a 3D portrayal of ghouls. The ghouls in Fallout New Vegas are discriminated against less than in previous titles, which is absolutely fine. Not everyone everywhere would be violently opposed to ghouls in their society. There are also notably less ghouls in Fallout New Vegas than in previous titles. This is also fine. There would realistically be less and less ghouls as time goes on. Less people would be ghoulified in a location like New Vegas that did not experience any direct nuclear explosions. The number of ghouls in the area would also decrease over time. Those that were ghoulified would either go feral or die out. Those that remained would most likely find odd jobs here and there or band together in small communities. Unless, of course, you were writing the world of Fallout as a looter-shooter instead of a grounded post-apocalypse in an alternate history of America. In which case, you'd probably want an absurd amount of ghouls so that the player never has to go without hordes of zombies to kill. But we aren't at Fallout 4 yet, so let's get back to Vegas. The ghouls in New Vegas are shown to have an overall better quality of life than in previous games. We can meet ghouls like Beatrix Russell, who is working as a guard for the followers of the apocalypse. We can convince her to leave this job and become an escort in a quest for the Atomic Wrangler. We can meet Calamity, who works as an assistant doctor in Jacobstown. Hadrian is a ghoul working as a comedian in Freeside, though through a quest we can contract him to work for the Tops Casino. All examples of ghouls with quality of life on par with anyone else in the wasteland. The quest Come Fly With Me follows a cult of ghouls led by one Jason Bright, as they attempt to travel to the great beyond in a Repcon rocket. The remainder of ghouls to be found are mostly lowlives living in Freeside like Grex and Rotface. They are lowlives not because of their ghoulish nature, but simply products of the harsh life in the Mojave. Fallout New Vegas also shows us several instances of ghoulification happening. There is the aforementioned nuking of bases resulting in ghoulification. Another notable example is the NCR troops at Camp Searchlight. The Frumentari, Wolpes, and Culta sabotaged the town with chemical warfare. Massive levels of radiation blanketed the town, killing most life in the area. The NCR troops stationed here have been ghoulified as a result. The attack happened not long before the start of Fallout New Vegas, meaning this is another example of ghoulification happening rather quickly. In addition, the NCR and Legion troops we find in the Divide have been ghoulified by the savage bombing and radiation storms here. Fallout New Vegas portrays ghouls perfectly. Their appearance is fantastic. They find ways to survive or eke out a living the same as everyone else. The ghoulification process has continued with the previous continuity. Ghoulification follows the same vague process as the previous games. I very much appreciate how Fallout New Vegas shows a change in the hierarchy of society. Ghouls are not simply shunned and forced out of civilized areas. Everybody here is trying to do the same thing: survive and find some semblance of happiness and fulfillment. It's great to see that the world is not trapped in the same black and white social caste system. The world of Fallout is evolving and progressing, seen through both the better treatment of ghouls as well as the decreasing population. Fallout New Vegas does an excellent job with their portrayal of ghouls. They need to eat, sleep, and drink water. They are also not dependent on any magical serum to stave off turning feral. They are people, the same as anyone else, maimed and broken by the wasteland, but still thriving in the post-apocalypse. Let's move on to Fallout 4. Bethesda's second main entry in the Fallout series is where ghouls take a turn for the worst. Being Bethesda's flagship for Fallout games, further adaptations of the series will use this game as their inspiration, further spawning the degenerated parody of the Fallout IP. Since Fallout 4 was nothing but wacky, sarcastic jokes and bastardized, cartoonish lore, it's no surprise that their interpretation of ghouls falls short of their initial concept. In Fallout 4, all ghouls look the same. All of them. It seems to me they simply had a ghoul skin they could paste over the existing character model. This means we will see ghouls with different facial spacing and body proportions, but each scar, burn, and nose will be identical. Now, it is important to note that Fallout 3 and New Vegas had a very similar issue. However, and this is an important however, there are two distinctions to be made here. First, of course, is engine limitations. In the older Fallouts, this argument actually has weight when it comes to things like this. It takes a long time and a lot of engine space to have many unique rotting appearances on various NPCs. Fallout 4 was made in 2015. Engine limitations means jack shit when it comes to faces in the wasteland. After seeing the plethora of human models and their varied appearances, there is no engine excuse for this lack of diversity. We should see this improved in Fallout 5, but it's Bethesda, so... The second point is that the older games did a better job at having diverse ghoul appearances than Fallout 4 did. While most of the ghouls in Fallout 3 and New Vegas just had the same model like Fallout 4, the color of the ghouls made a world of difference. Having the ghouls be different shades makes them much more distinct from NPC to NPC. For example, some have colors added to their scars that appear almost as if veins and fresh pink flesh is visible, while others have a more orange, dare I say crispy, tone to them. Changing the level at which these ghouls appear to be decaying adds a much-needed variety to the population of ghouls. This color difference alone goes to great lengths to diversify the ghoul NPCs throughout the games. In Fallout 4, every ghoul is the same peachy beige hue. Some ghouls manage to have this shade slightly less vibrant, but that is the extent of the diversity in ghoul appearances. Aside from that very minute color difference, each ghoul looks exactly the same, to the point where when you are talking to different NPCs, you will find yourself looking at the same two scars above the lip and the same hole in their cheek. When players notice things like this in a game that has the capability to have varied ghoul appearances, it can be very immersion-breaking. And yes, I remember that one green ghoul from the Raider DLC, but that doesn't excuse the entire rest of the population. Aside from the fact that ghouls look the same, let's discuss the ghouls' appearance as it is. It sucks. These ghouls look terrible. Gone are the days of actual rotting corpses standing before you. Now ghouls just look like noseless burn victims. They used to look like living corpses. You know, what they were intended to be. Fallout 4 made every ghoul in the wasteland look like the same noseless pink smooth skin model. No veins or muscles exposed. No skull or bones exposed. No disgusting, moist, rotting flesh. It seems to me, and many others, that Bethesda felt the need to make ghouls more attractive to appeal to wider audiences. This might come as a surprise to you, but ghouls aren't supposed to be attractive. Whatever necrophiliac fantasy of hot ghouls they are attempting to make does not belong in Fallout. Fallout New Vegas already had Beatrix. The point was how gross it would be to find a ghoul attractive. It is essentially necrophilia. To retroactively make the ghouls more appealing in order to justify this somehow does not make sense. What are we doing here? The reason this is important is because now the current visual of ghouls is the Fallout 4 ghoul. This downgrade in the realism of the world is not insubstantial. The appearance of ghouls was fundamentally changed by this game into something it was never meant to be, and this model has become the current one, to be carried on in future adaptations and future games. What a downgrade in the aesthetic of the wasteland. Now enough about Fallout 4's ghoul appearances. I'm starting to get pissed. We gotta move on. The ghouls in Fallout 4 have reverted back to the oppressor/oppressed worldview. Ghouls are now hated by the one city in the game. There's a crime-filled slum city full of ghouls, because now, if ghouls are in society, they must be criminal junkies with gray morality. We cannot have ghoul doctors or ghoul farmers without them being considered a novelty in the wasteland. Ghouls used to just be people who survived the bombs. Now, it's almost as if ghouls function as their own species of humanoid in the same way that super mutants do. The game treats meeting peaceful ghouls or ghouls making an honest living as some unique spectacle for the player to see. This is because in Fallout 4, all ghouls are expected to be junkie criminals or lone outcasts. It is meant to be a surprise that ghouls could band together and form their own society in the wasteland. This is despite the many examples in previous games of ghouls doing just this. They are people, the same as anyone else. Ghouls were the first settlers of the wasteland. The fact that this game treats this as some unique, unexpected event is the very embodiment of the problem with Bethesda's ghouls. Now on to the lore retcons. I'm sure many of you were waiting for this one, but let's discuss the kid in a fridge quest. In Fallout 4, the player can stumble upon a fridge on the side of the road. We can hear a child's voice from inside shouting for help. If the player opens this fridge, we meet a ghoul child. After speaking with him, he reveals to us that he has been trapped in that fridge since the bombs fell. For 200 years. For 2 centuries, this boy has been trapped in this fridge. Aside from the fucking retarded logic of that, it more importantly establishes that ghouls in the world of Fallout do not need to eat or drink. Let me say that again. Bethesda decided that ghouls in the world of Fallout do not need to eat or drink to survive. For 200 years, this child has had no protein and no water. This destroys the lore of ghouls altogether. One of the biggest choices a player had to make in Fallout 1 revolved around the ghoul city of Necropolis. The choice to take their water chip and leave an entire city to its inevitable death by dehydration. This quest shows the utter disregard for established lore and the new view of ghouls in Bethesda's Fallout. The new ghouls are literally immortal. Whereas ghouls in the original games could survive a very long time until they inevitably decayed past the point of return, ghouls in Bethesda's world are literal gods. They don't need to eat or drink. Exactly how does radiation fill their stomach or sustain their mammal body for 2 centuries? 200 years without food or water would have turned this boy into a fucking raisin at best. It just doesn't make sense. But wait, there's more, Amicus. Not only did he survive in the fridge in the same place for 200 years, his parents also turned into ghouls and survived. And they are right down the road. Bethesda has no idea how long 200 years is. They decided it was more important to destroy the canon of Fallout for this stupid Indiana Jones reference. Do you realize that 200 years ago, America had its 6th presidential election? Cars were over 60 years away from being invented. Planes were 80 years away from being invented. 200 years without any source of sustenance is just absurd. Fallout 4 did irreparable damage to the very concept of ghouls in this world. They transformed them from damaged survivors into immortal smooth-skinned gods. The ghouls in Fallout 4 would be the most valuable commodity in the wasteland. Imagine having slaves that never needed to eat or drink. If the world of Fallout 4 took itself seriously at all, then every ghoul would have been hunted down and enslaved to work on a food plantation, where their overlords never had to worry about feeding or watering the free and undying labor. But it gets even worse, Amicus. Let's move on to the newest iteration of ghouls in the Fallout TV show. The Fallout TV show fundamentally changed the way ghouls operate in the world of Fallout. The show clearly took most of its inspiration from the Fallout 4 iteration of ghouls. Fallout 4 changed ghouls substantially. The show took this even further to the point that the ghouls it depicts are not at all the same species of humanoid as they were originally. This degradation in the lore and realism of the Fallout world is just another instance of the Fallout IP's fundamental aspects being changed. It has gone from a realistic depiction of a cruel and bleak post-apocalypse into a wacky sci-fi shoot-'em-up genre that cannot take any aspect of itself seriously. Since the abysmal show was already declared canon, we can base what we shall see in Fallout 5 off of what was depicted in this show. Sit back and hold on to your lore, Amicus. This one will try to take it from you. Let's start with the appearance of ghouls in the Fallout TV show. The ghoul, Cooper Howard, only vaguely resembles the ghouls of Fallout 4. Yet another step of making ghouls look more like smoothskins than half the smoothskins. Cooper Howard just looks like a noseless pink man with gaunt eyes. Ghouls are meant to be decayed and rotting individuals who somehow survived the radiation storms in the wasteland. The Fallout show used just enough of the stereotypical ghoul features to get across that this was a ghoul. Noseless and burned? That'll tell him it's a ghoul. Good enough. Some of the background ghoul characters look fine, but for the most part the ghouls in the show barely pass for ghouls instead of regular people with burn scars. Past the appearance, there is the matter of the ghoul juice. What the fuck, guys? Hold on, everybody. Geralt of Cooper Howard needs his supply of black liquid so that he can shoot his guns right. This was clearly just invented as some cheap, instant plot motivation for the writers. For this, they traded what was left of the lore continuity for ghouls. In the Fallout TV show, ghouls must drink vials of special ghoul liquid, otherwise they will succumb to their feral state. Instead of that being an inevitable end for all ghouls, it can now be staved off indefinitely, as long as this serum is available. I have some questions about this. Who made it? When did they discover it? Did all the ghouls go feral before they discovered it? Who supplies it? What is it? How does this serum prevent the eventual decay of brain tissue? How could there possibly be enough to satisfy the tens of thousands of ghouls in the wasteland? Do they have this in other countries? Are all the ghouls required to use this juice? Or is this just a special California ghoul juice? In which case, why haven't we seen it before in the previous games that took place in exactly this spot? Does that mean that all ghouls across the US are feral without it? Have all the other ghouls except for the ones here gone feral? Since this show has already been declared canon, all of these questions will need to be addressed in Fallout 5. Otherwise, we can completely give up on the Fallout IP ever making some semblance of sense forever. If all these people care about is seeing vault suits, noseless men, deathclaws, and power armor, then this franchise is completely fucked. Gone the way of Star Wars. Bastardized and reimagined until the only resemblance to the originals is the iconic imagery of lightsabers and spaceship lasers. What else could the show have damaged, you may ask? Well, next let's talk about ghouls' nutrition habits. This show has doubled down on the kid in a fridge logic that ghouls do not need to eat or sleep to survive. As was pointed out in the comments of my video on the Fallout TV show, there is in fact an IV bag going into Cooper Howard's grave. Okay, well, that solves the magical made-up serum question regarding his survival. But did we see any food? Did they fill the coffin with sandwiches? Did we see a mountain of Cliff Bar wrappers fall out when it opened? No? Well then, ghouls don't need to eat or drink to survive. Congratulations, they just keep getting more and more invincible. Speaking of invincible, ghouls now regenerate any damage done to their body. I know, the obvious question is, how the fuck does that make any sense with them being rotten individuals in the first place? How would their noses fall off if they can regenerate faster than X-Men's Wolverine? The answer is, don't think about it. Just consume product and get excited for next product. The character Thaddeus is shot through the neck with an arrow. He pulls it out and heals in a second. So his windpipe, vocal cords, Adam's apple, and whatever bones it may have grazed all healed in an instant. When he takes the magical vial of bullshit that turns him into a ghoul, in an instant his foot literally just grows and reforms within seconds. The muscles literally pull themselves back together and repair almost instantly. His bones just regrow and fix themselves. What the fuck is this joke of a show? Oh, that's right. I forgot the whole thing is a parody. It's all parody, guys. Didn't you know? When you were playing through the realistic and grounded world of Fallout 1, 2, and New Vegas, you just misunderstood all of the competent world design and lore continuity. It was actually just parody the whole time, guys. We just never noticed it before now. No, it didn't make sense. It was all fucking parody. I love seeing my favorite IP turned into a fucking joke of itself. If ghouls functioned as they do in the show, they would be the ultimate prize in the wasteland. They would all be hunted down and enslaved. A race of superhumans who do not require food or water, and who are impervious to damage. These would be the ultimate workers. As long as their overlords had a steady supply of ghoul juice, they would have a literal infinite source of manual labor. Ghouls who couldn't feel pain and regenerate any damage they sustain. Or the ghouls would band together and subjugate all of the non-ghouls in the wasteland. If ghouls took power over the food and water of a region, they could wait them out until they had subjugated the entire populace. This type of ghoul simply cannot function in the existing world of Fallout, because the fact of the matter is, with these kinds of abilities, the events of Fallout would never have transpired as they have until this point. The lore of Fallout would have been completely different if this was how ghouls operated in the world. Not only have they ruined what ghouls are going to be in the future, with this logic, they have destroyed how ghouls even got to this point. Alright, conclusion time. The ghouls of Fallout were people who survived the bombs, the nuclear darkness, and the radiation storms. They rebuilt what they could of society and survived through the harshest times in the wasteland. After many years, residents of vaults crawled out to the wasteland and pushed them out. They built their societies on top of the world the ghouls had called home. These survivors have been pushed around throughout the series, yet they still find ways to survive, as well as purpose and fulfillment in the wasteland. They are kept alive until their body inevitably reaches a point of decay at which they are no longer in control of their cognitive faculties. At such a point, they will inevitably go feral and lose whatever was left of the individual they once were. And Bethesda's Fallout. Ghouls were people who survived the bombs. They became immortal beings in the wasteland. They are impervious to struggles of food, water, and physical damage. The only thing they need is a vial of magical liquid on a regular basis, or they will turn feral and cannibalize each other. Somehow they were pushed around, beaten down, and bullied by all the smoothskins, even though the whole time they were invincible without needing resources to survive. Somehow. So what can we expect from Fallout 5? I expect we will see more smooth-skinned ghouls. I doubt they will keep the vile thing canon. They'll probably make up some stupid excuse for ghouls not needing it. They might even drop it in Season 2 of the show, because it's just such a problematic, lame facet of the world. Otherwise, I'm sure they could make a bunch of Radiant quests out of constantly needing to scour ghoul juice from raiders or dungeons throughout the world. I predict ghouls will regress to their oppressed state in the wasteland. Ghouls will be living in the outskirts in tiny communities. Any notable ghouls we meet will no doubt be of the morally gray, dangerous drug addict variety. Since that seems to be the only way ghouls are portrayed now, we can expect more of that. Sketchy, immortal individuals who take the danger and internal logic of their world as seriously as Bethesda does. That is to say, not at all. Ghouls are one of my favorite elements of the original games. Since Bethesda has decided they don't survive centuries until they go feral, instead they literally survive forever, we can expect to see many ghouls in each new installment, regardless of time and location. I'm sure the map will be absolutely flooded with feral ghouls, so that the player has plenty of zombies to shoot. How else will the player collect bottle caps, pencil sharpeners, and aluminum cans? These people went from grizzled survivors to immortal druggies. Tell me, Amicus, do you think it was worth it? Do you think these changes are for the better? Does this meaningfully progress the story and world of our beloved Fallout IP? One thing is for sure, it gives players an infinite supply of things to shoot. And that's all we really want out of Fallout, right? And with that, Wale Amicus.